So at this point, I'm still around the age of 22, I'm going on 23, and I've decided that I'm gonna close out all secular music from life. I keep on doing this hand action when I'm closing out all secular music from my life, and I'm now trying to pursue meaning and truth and wisdom and genuine insight. That is the point that we've now reached in this journey. But that's now left quite a big void in my life, to be honest. To go from being immersed in music to suddenly having no music, that's left quite a big hole in my life. And it was at this point that I turned to the Christian music scene in order to fill that hole. Now, there are broadly two kinds of Christian music. There is what could be called vertical Christian music, or in other words, worship. This is music where people are singing directly to God, they're extolling Him, they're praising Him, and so forth. And then there's horizontal Christian music. This is where Christian artists sing about the world and about life issues, political issues, and philosophical issues from a Christian perspective through the lens of the Bible, so to speak. Now, in this video, we're going to talk about the vertical first. We'll talk about the horizontal in the next video. And I've got to go very carefully here so as not to be misunderstood. I have to be very precise in what I'm going to say here. Worship as an activity, as something to participate in, as something to be a part of, as something to do, I've always enjoyed that. It's a great thing. It's an amazing thing. Whether that be alone singing along to something in the car or as part of a congregation in a church, worship as an act, worship as something to do and to participate in, it's a great thing. It's an amazing thing. Worship as a passive listening experience though, and congregational singing as a passive listening experience, I've never really gotten into that. And I found that I really struggled when I was trying to leave secular music behind to get into the modern worship scene, modern worship music. Now that might be a surprising thing for a Christian to say, but there's a John Christ sketch that might help me explain where those struggles were coming from, because I really identify with this sketch. I was actually going to leave this till the end, but if I just play it now, it'll help me to explain, it'll help us to work through this episode. So here's the sketch now, and I'll link the full one down below. If you don't know who John Christ is, he's a Christian comedian. He does sketches like this on social media, and he also does stand-up as well.
Guys, welcome in. Excited to have you. We're going to get right to the point. We've seen you guys on YouTube. We want to sign you to a Christian music record deal.
We're going to get you guys circulating on Christian radio. How's that sound, huh?
Yeah, first of all, let me just say I love the diversity.
Yes.
Love what you guys are doing here. It's really going to connect, resonate with our audience. Listen, if you want Christian music radio airplay, we know the formula. It's real simple. Dirt roads, trucks, multiple uses of the word girl.
Well, that's next page.
Oh, shoot, that's country music. Christian music song formula. 3 chords, simple rhymes, vague struggles, boom, hit song. You ever been flipping through the dial and you come across a song and you're like, that just sounds Christian. Christian chord charts, even easier. A, D, G.
It's the holy trinity of Christian music.
Lyric writing is even easier, you guys.
Oh yeah, you always got to start with a vague struggle, all right? A hard time.
Geographical references.
Yes.
Storm, valley, desert.
You got to throw in some vague Christian terms and just connect them randomly. Make it really predictable. Watch this. Seek His face, mercy,
Grace.
feel His love, bless from
Above.
We could sell that to Casting Crowns or Sanctus Real
Right
now.
We were thinking about writing more honest lyrics, stuff from the heart.
Okay, John Mark McMillan.
Who's that?
Yeah, exactly.
You ever heard of the song How He Loves?
The Tomlin version?
The Crowder version. The Mercy Me version.
Oh, the Carrie Job version.
The Jeremy Camp version. The Passion version.
Exactly. McMillan writes from the heart. No one's ever heard of him. If it wasn't for that sloppy wet kiss line, he'd be at the Passion Conference right now.
We just like to be more vulnerable in our lyrics. Talk about real issues.
Okay, like not reading the Bible enough?
Like not balancing work and family well?
No, like real issues, like addiction.
You can only mention your struggles in an abstract type
Yes.
way. Drowning, sinking.
Rain, rain on my face. That's from the smash hit Flood.
Ever heard of it? Waves crashing.
I don't know. This is a big one. Oceans? Checkmate.
Basically,
Thank you.
all you need to know is more water references.
There are 3 things that sketch highlighted that I want to talk about. 1, the simplicity of the music. 2, the superficiality of the lyrics. And 3, just the fact that the Christian music industry is an industry at all. We'll start off with the least of these 3 complaints, which is the simplicity of the music. And I think in fairness, to be honest, there is a genuine reason to want to keep worship music simple. Namely, it's designed to be sung by large groups of people or congregations. And you can't really do complex things with congregational singing because you would lose people if you did. The songs need to be easy to follow so that everyone can sing in unison with them. They need to be easy to follow so that people can follow them. They need to be predictable so that people get an instant handle on where it's going and what you're trying to do. And they need to stay within an easy vocal register so that everybody can hit those notes. And that's part of what makes it a really powerful experience when you're in it. The fact that everyone can follow and can participate, and together you create this swell of noise and praise and worship to God. But while the simplicity makes it an enjoyable thing to be a part of, I think it makes for a less interesting listening experience if you're not a part of it. In fact, if you've ever been in a Christian worship event and it's been fantastic in that moment and you've loved it and it's just been so powerful, and so you think to yourself, I'm going to get a recording of this and I'll probably listen to it all the time at home and in the car because this has just been great, this has just been so powerful. And then you put it on to listen back to it and it just loses something and it's not nearly as stimulating and you find that you don't listen to it a great deal. Well, that's the kind of thing I'm talking about. The thing is, I don't want predictability and simplicity from a listening experience. I want to be caught off guard. I want novelty. I want to hear things I've never heard before. I want to hear people express instrumental and vocal talents that I don't have, and I want to hear them hit notes that I can't reach. This is why I liked albums like Pet Sounds, for example, by the Beach Boys. The songs on that album are layered with all of these interesting sounds that catch you off guard and you never really know where it's going next. The songs will change tempo randomly halfway through, or they'll come to a complete stop and take a left turn and you don't know where it's going next. I find that stimulating to listen to. I find it interesting. I want that kind of thing. That's why I love the Beatles as well. They were so inventive and experimental with their songs. You listen to songs like Strawberry Fields Forever and every verse has a different arrangement on it, or A Day in the Life. It starts off as one thing and you think you know where it's going, and then there's this big orchestral swell, the like of which you never heard before, and then you're on to something completely different afterwards. And the Beatles experimented with things like drum loops and orchestration and backwards guitar solos and medleys and all this kind of stuff. And I found that coming from the complexity of that kind of stuff to basic 3-chord worship music, not nearly as stimulating, to be honest. Again, it's great when you're in the room and when you're singing in unison with hundreds of other people and you're lost in that moment of praise and worship and adoration of God. It's a great thing. It's an amazing thing. But as a listening experience, I really struggle to go from the complexity of the Beatles and the Beach Boys and things like that to the simplicity of 3-chord worship music. So that's the first thing that I struggled with. And again, it's the least important thing because simple songs can still be good as well, we've got to say. The second thing that sketch highlighted, which was more of an issue, is the superficiality of the lyrics in a lot of modern worship songs. I was specifically in this moment where I was looking for depth, truth, wisdom, genuine insight. And instead, I did find that a lot of modern worship just has these empty cliches and trite platitudes. That sketch talked about sticking random cliches together in a really obvious fashion, and I've got to admit, I've had that exact same thought listening to a lot of modern worship songs.
Valley, desert.
You gotta throw in some vague Christian terms and just connect them randomly, make it really predictable.
The image that has sometimes come to my mind with some modern worship songs, and I say some because there are some good ones out there as well, but with some, is that the writers have this big barrel next to them. And in this barrel are lots of Christianese cliches and platitudes, and they put on a blindfold and they simply dip their hand in and pull out whatever may come, and then just stitch the cliches together in a way that doesn't seem to really mean much. So they dip their hand in, they pull out the first line. What's the first line going to be? Worthy is the Lamb. That's the first line of this song. That's a great first line. Okay, what's the second line going to be? We lift your name high. Worthy is the Lamb, we lift your name high. This is a great song. Okay, what's the third line going to be? We seek your face. Worthy is the Lamb, we lift your name high, we seek your face. This has got number 1 written all over it. And you end up with a song just full of cliches that you've heard a million times before, just randomly stitched together in a way that seems to lack authenticity. Now, as a contrast to this, my favorite hymn of all time is It Is Well With My Soul. All my life I've been really moved by that song. I always felt there was something about it that just elevated it above being a normal song. In fact, there used to be a citywide worship event in Aberdeen in the 2000s called Sold Out. And I remember being at one of these events and they played It Is Well With My Soul. And on the third verse, the whole auditorium spontaneously broke out into a round of applause and cheers. I've never experienced that before. It was like An authentic eruption of worship broke out within the worship session. That doesn't always happen, but I remember around that time thinking, I need to discover where this song comes from and what it's all about and why it's so powerful that it causes this spontaneous eruption of worship in the worship session. There's something unique about this song. Why does it stand out so much? So I started Googling, I went onto YouTube, and I discovered the story of this song. Now, most Christians probably already know this story because it's quite a well-known story, but basically the writer was a man called Horatio Spafford. Spafford had been quite successful in life, he was quite wealthy, but in a very short space of time, he lost almost everything. It was a bit of a Job situation. He lost his business in a fire, he lost most of his wealth, and then he lost all of his children, his 4 daughters, all at once at sea when a ship sank. So basically he was brought to complete ruins in a very short space of time. And it was from that place of tragedy that he wrote "It Is Well With My Soul" as a song of defiance and a song of determined faith in the face of that suffering. When peace like a river attendeth my way, when sorrows like sea billows roll, whatever my lot, you have taught me to say, it is well with my soul. Though Satan should buffet, though trial should come, let this blessed assurance control, that Christ has regarded my helpless estate and has shed his own blood for my soul. It is well with my soul. When I heard Spafford's story, the power of the song suddenly made sense. This was true worship. This was authentic. He meant every word of this. When you're singing this song, it's not some empty sentiment. These are the words of a man who was brought to his absolute knees and began pouring his heart out onto the page. Yes, he talks about the sea and there's water references, but when he's writing that down, he's thinking of the sea billows that took the lives of his 4 daughters. These words mean something to him. These words have authentic meaning. These words are true worship. I think you can tell the difference between authentic worship and superficial lyrics where they just seem to be sticking their hand in a barrel and pulling out cliches and sticking them together randomly. And that kind of leads on to the third point about the fact that worship songs do tend to come from within a worship song industry these days. There was a famous worship leader on Twitter many years ago, and he was prompted by his record label to produce a new worship album. So as part of his contract, he had to make a certain number of albums. He hadn't released one for a while, so they'd come to him and basically said, look, you need to give us something, it's time. Now, he'd then come to his audience on Twitter and said, my record label is saying I've got to make a new record, a new album. What kind of things should I write about on this album? What kind of subjects would you be interested in hearing about if I was to make this record? So basically, he was trying to figure out what would make this a popular album with his audience. And I just kind of thought as I read that, if you don't already have something to say on this album, or if God hasn't already given you something authentic, something that is weighing on your heart and mind and is being birthed from within the depths of your spirit. And if you're just putting this album together basically because you have to, because it's in your contract, and if you need to ask your audience for ideas to sing about because you're coming up empty and you don't really have any, that's not going to be true worship. Worship should come from within the depths of your spirit, an authentic reaction to a holy, glorious, and majestic God for his goodness, for what he's done through his Son, and for what he's done in your life. And as I look at the modern worship scene, it may be very harsh to say this, and again, I apologize if this is wrong, but it just seems to me that many modern Christian worship songs are coming from professional songwriters within an industry who actually don't have anything authentic to say, but are merely contracted to keep on churning out songs and albums anyway in order to feed an industry. And that's what I think leads to the lack of depth and the cliches in some of the modern lyrics, because you can't fake authenticity. You have Horatio Spafford here, for whom every word is meaningful and real and is coming from the tragedy of losing his family to the sea. And then you have this industry churning out songs merely to meet contracts. I think you can tell the difference when you sing these songs, and when you're in that moment of worship, I think you can tell the difference between the two. And as I try to leave secular music behind, I found that I just couldn't get into the Hillsong Bethel scene because it just seemed filled with all of these meaningless cliches. And then it turned out that some of the big name writers have now left the faith, and you wonder if they had any to begin with when they were writing these songs. And again, I apologize if I'm being harsh here. There are some really good worship songs out there, and music is very subjective, and I know a lot of people love this kind of thing. And I know there are many of these worship songs that do come from a genuine place, and I don't want this series to just be me complaining about all kinds of music endlessly as though nothing pleases me. But I'm just trying to be honest about the kind of struggles that I had as I went on this journey. I just think that that sketch makes some very good points that do call for reflection from within the Christian community. And also, I blame Hillsong for this trend of playing droning sounds for about 3 minutes before the song actually begins. What is that? Especially in the quieter songs. Okay, when's the song beginning? Actually, it feels a bit manipulative. Maybe that's why I don't like it. I just want something authentic. I want something authentic.